These two boxes of Rallyman are jam-packed with possibilities, and it's my intention to highlight all of the interesting things you can do with them. This is Shakedown. In today's Shakedown, we stop to ask just what surface type is this?
6 right cut, and long 6 left, into turn 3 left, big cut.
I like big cuts, and I cannot lie, and in the Rally Catalunya you can find some huge shortcuts that, in some cases, see you leaving the asphalt entirely. On some stretches of the road you might even be wondering if gravel tyres would have been the better choice, and more than a decade ago some Rallyman players wondered that too. The Rallyman tiles are separated into surfaces, asphalt, snow and gravel, and while you can mix and match which tiles get placed next to each other, there are no tiles which include multiple surfaces. Or are there? At no point in the Rallyman rules are the surfaces of shortcut spaces defined. It is assumed, no doubt for ease of play, that a shortcut is the same surface as the rest of the tile, and for gravel tiles that makes a lot of sense. But for asphalt? Surely a shortcut this big could be gravel. The art does look more than a little ambiguous, doesn't it? This is not a new idea, because I was inspired by a Board Game Geek post from way back in 2012, where Graham wondered whether being on gravel tyres would eliminate the speed limit restrictions on a corner that had had dirt sprayed onto it from someone going through its shortcut. And the response from Jean-Christophe was that the penalty should be ignored. But so far as I can tell, that was the last of that. There were some other ideas proposed, but nothing came out of this thread. So why don't we find out what happens with similar rulings in today's Rallyman and see if there's anything in this idea. I think we can all imagine how ignoring the speed limit restriction would play though, so let's expand the rule to something like this. All shortcut spaces are now considered to be a gravel surface, and if a corner has at least one mud token on it, it too is considered to be a gravel space. Hopefully you'll already have some kind of idea of how situational this rule is, and that testing it out on a live stage probably won't show it off to anyone's satisfaction, so let's just dive into an example and fully explain what could happen. Let's assume this tile has a single mud token on it. Under the regular rules, the speed limit of this corner is now 1 on the inside and 2 on the outside, and the surface remains asphalt. A car on asphalt tyres can be in gears 1 to 4 in this space if they want to drive through the corner, or anywhere in gears 1 to 5 in this space if they want to drive through the shortcut, which again, under normal rules, is assumed to be asphalt. And these entry gears are all thanks to the availability of a brake die while these tyres are on their preferred surface. If we implement the rule that any corner space with a mud token on it is now considered to be a gravel space, as well as all shortcut spaces, what happens? The speed limits are still reduced by 1, but as asphalt tyres do not have the use of a brake die while on gravel, your entry speeds are also reduced by 1. Gears 1 to 3 in this space, or gears 1 to 4 if you want to go through the shortcut. Getting onto the corner might still be relatively easy then, but drifting around it has gotten riskier, as the asphalt dashboard is going to be using leader dice instead of coast dice while in this corner. Is that a safer risk than going through the shortcut, where you might lose the use of a coast die altogether? That'll be up to each driver to work out. So what happens if you're on gravel tyres instead? First of all, we can ignore the -1 speed limit restriction entirely, meaning this corner still has its speed limit of 3 around the outside and 2 on the inside. Then, because these spaces are considered to be gravel, we get to use our brake die, which we can't normally use on asphalt. So you can be in as high as 5th gear on either of these spaces before the corner and still safely brake down to 3rd gear to drift around the outside or take the shortcut. But all of this requires there to be a mud token on the tile in the first place, which requires not only cars ahead of you, and not only cars ahead of you taking shortcuts, but cars ahead of you taking shortcuts that result in mud tokens being placed onto the stage. The odds aren't really in your favour for that to happen, and if it does, is it worth compromising the rest of your rally being on the wrong tyres for perhaps every other space on stage? Rallyman is so modular that we can get into as much or as little detail as we'd like. It is conceivable that, if mud tokens turn corners into gravel spaces, that some rule could be devised that sweeps them clean, therefore removing mud tokens. Again, not my idea, but a thought that comes straight from that old forum post. I think that's a bit too rare a circumstance to worry about, but I am thinking of turning all the shortcuts into gravel spaces. Even that alone can make players question their decisions, what with having no brakes or a change in coast to leader dice depending on the dashboard. It really doesn't take much to come up with a different way to play, you just have to look at the rules from a different angle. This, for example, is a cloud token, except in GT races where it's called a fog token instead, but there's absolutely nothing stopping you from calling it a dust token to represent the high levels of dust lingering in the air from the cars ahead, or a broken wiper token that results in you struggling to see through heavy rain. Well, in that case, the lack of rules for heavy rain prevent you from calling it that, but this is Rallyman. You can come up with rules to serve whatever purpose you like, but no amount of rules can make trees disappear.
30 here, 2 left, narrow, watch this one, 36 left.
Seriously, don't cut.